immediately fatal. I guess he might have collapsed in pain and then later bled to death. I don't really know. In any case, having a bunch of Royal Marines, not Royal Marines, fuck. I thought I stopped saying that. Having a bunch of Marines stashed over here is hopefully going to pay off by sneaking up behind this King Tiger. It's been a while since I played this game, so I don't remember if it succeeds. I imagine it doesn't, because that is like 20 infantrymen accompanying that thing, so that's not happening. I do have a ZIS-2 parked right to the side of the King Tiger. This is basically a perfect angle, and unfortunately it's not going to do anything. Yeah, see that? Like, King Tiger has a lot of armor, but we can still damage the track, so that's always the first thing. That's the first thing to do when you see one of these super tanks, is damage the track, and the second thing to do is start taking out the engine. Unfortunately, my ally's IS-3 got knocked out by the King Tiger. So, now it is time for the promised rant. This King Tiger just knocked out my ally's IS-3, which was bought to counter the Tiger and the Panther. And what does this sound like? Well, that sounds like a crap ton of tanks, and in fact, that sounds like a crap ton of super heavy tanks with super big guns and super good armor that are very hard to penetrate. And now what does this mean? That means we are playing on no payback. Yes, that is right. This is the game mode where when you purchase something with your points, the points are gone forever, and if the thing dies, you don't get the points back, and, that's it. And so you say, fine, that sounds perfect. What's the alternative? The alternative is with payback. With payback, when something dies, you will get your points back that you spent on it. The points don't come back immediately. Watch this. I shoot the guy out of the gunner seat on the Tiger. My plan was to do that like 8 times, and eventually there would be no one left in the Tiger, and then I could run up and take it and drive around and go to Germany and shoot Hitler. But with payback is the alternative. You get your points back as your stuff dies, but they don't come back immediately. If you spend 10 points on a vehicle and the vehicle dies, you're not going to get 10 points back. You're going to get like 1 point back, and the next minute you get another point back, and the next minute you get another point back, blah blah blah. This is an SU-100 tank destroyer shooting at this Tiger, not penetrating. You see, I aim at the vision slit, because if I ever hit that, that'll totally go through, but mostly I'm just hitting the front armor, nothing's happening. But the difference between with payback and no payback is that with payback, it doles out your points slower. Like, you get them back when something dies, but they come back like gradually. So you usually don't have a huge amount of points at any time, because you've spent it all on units, and when those units die, they don't come back super fast. So you keep buying small units, and when they die, you just get enough for another small unit rather quickly. With no payback, which is what we're playing on now, you basically get all your points, and it's up to you to buy whatever you want. Units are time limited, so the Tiger you can only buy after like 4 minutes or something, and the Panther after 5, and the King Tiger after 6 minutes. But once those time have elapsed, you can buy as many as you want with however many points you want. So typically what happens is that people play like normal until the Tiger becomes available, then they buy a Tiger. Then they play like normal with a Tiger till the Panther becomes available, then they buy a Panther. They play like normal until the King Tiger becomes available, then they also buy a King Tiger. And if you haven't knocked out enough of these super tanks by the time they're buying super tanks, you're pretty much fucked. Because it's just huge amounts of King Tigers and Panthers and stuff driving all over the map. And unless you can start doing some crazy stuff to take them out, like your opponent's stupid and he drives way too close and you get him with an AT grenade, or you get incredibly lucky with your own super tanks and you knock him out, they're just going to get a critical mass of critical tanks, and they're just going to own you, because once they can just blow all their points on these tanks, and sure, they can only buy one at a time, because once you buy a Tiger, it takes a little while for the Tiger thing to recharge, but same with the Panther and the King Tiger and blah blah blah, but there's nothing stopping them from blowing pretty much all their points on super tanks as soon as they become available. And this doesn't work so well. I just don't like the game dynamic, because it just degenerates into people buying the largest tank they can possibly get, and one of 2 things happens. Well, okay, one of 3 things happens. Typically 2 things. One, they're an idiot, and they get their tank almost immediately killed. They wait around until another super tank's available, they buy that, they get that almost immediately killed, and then they run out of points halfway through the game, having spent it all on 3 amazing tanks that they couldn't keep alive for more than 2 minutes, and they quit. Because they have nothing left to do. They've blown their load. It was a premature tankulation or whatever. Like, they have nothing left to do. They suck at the game. They bought the giant tanks they could, right-clicked on the enemy. It didn't win them the game, so they give up. The other alternative is that they're not stupid. They buy their giant tanks. I just killed that thing. They buy their giant tanks. They use them more or less well, as these people are doing. I mean, partially it's us not playing very well. We're incredibly rusty. But these guys aren't being stupid. They're not driving straight at us with their huge tanks. They use them more or less well, and you're screwed, especially if you're playing as the Americans or the Japanese, or the British to a lesser degree, where your only option is basically to get extremely lucky with an AT gun or AT grenade, or to buy your own super tank, which are clearly inferior and which have great difficulty standing up to the Germans. I don't know why that Panther turned to shoot me, but that sucked. So, as the Russians, it's not a huge problem. You can buy IS-2s and IS-3s and stuff. Those are really good tanks, T-34s. But then it just turns into a super tank fight. It's you buying gigantic tanks and them buying gigantic tanks, and everyone else runs little circles around the tanks and hopes they don't get shot. But the game just turns into a who can shoot the person's giant tank with their giant tank, and it's really not fun because you can't use, it's not like a tank warfare sort of thing, because it's not like you can drive all over the map. If you do that with your giant tank, someone's just gonna get hit with an AT grenade by some guy hiding in the bush. So you basically just have to hide behind a hill, poke up, shoot at the enemy tank, drive back behind the hill, and do that over and over until someone gets a lucky hit on somebody else's armor and the tank explodes, and then the game is basically over because you're out of super tanks because it's on no payback. But on with payback is very different, because you get your points back slowly, which means by the time the super tanks become available, you've probably spent all your points on units, because when they die, you'll just get the points back anyway, so there's no point in saving up. On no payback, people save up. They play sort of for a while, but mostly they're saving their points for their giant tanks, and then once the giant tanks are available, they blow most of their points in the giant tanks. With payback, there's no reason to save your points, so you buy a bunch of stuff. When the super tanks become available, you typically don't have enough to buy them. And you could, if you started saving up, once all your units die, but then you're sitting around and not doing anything, and typically you don't want to do that. So you can't afford, like, you know, a Tiger or something, but you're not going to be able to afford a Tiger and a King Tiger and a Panther and a bunch of other stuff, which you can in no payback, because with no payback you can afford all that stuff, but then you can never afford anything else again, and if it dies you'll lose and you'll quit halfway through the game because you suck. But with payback, one of two things happens. Either they suck at the game and they keep losing their stuff and they keep buying stuff and they just get worse and worse units, and eventually they're just buying a bunch of crap which you kill. Or they're not bad at the game and they use their units like normal, but they don't have such gigantic super tank units, and because they don't have the points to get it, because they've already spent their points on cheaper stuff, and when the cheaper stuff dies they immediately buy cheaper stuff instead of buying super tanks and whatever. And so it's not like you never see giant tanks, it's just you see far fewer giant tanks. And so it's not like giant tanks make the game awful, it's just that they do. I mean, like I said, either the person sucks at using them and they just get killed and the person quits early, or the person is moderately good at using them and it turns into a stupid pissing match halfway across the map, lobbing shells at each other until someone gets lucky. I mean, that's not what's fun about Men of War. What's fun about Men of War is assaulting a point with combined arms, with tanks and light vehicles and infantry, scouting around behind the opponent, dropping smoke grenades and running behind that to get up in special positions and then throwing grenades at them and stuff like that. You know, dynamic stuff, blowing up buildings, driving through buildings, playing dynamite and tank traps and mines and lobbing artillery halfway across the map and things, dropping booby traps and scouts and stuff. What is fun about Men of War is not buying the largest tank you can, driving it around the map and hoping you nail the opponent's largest tank. Because, I mean, come on, there's not a lot of strategy there. You just have to really hope your IS-3 doesn't get shot through the turret like mine just did. But, you know, to each his own, and I see a lot of people arguing for no payback because they think there's no downside to losing with payback. Psh, lame.